Hansi Flick, the new man in charge of Barcelona.
Hansi Flick took over Barcelona and changed almost everyone from making players physical beasts to destroy the tiki-taka football forever, which was once implemented by genius such as Johan Cruyff and Pep Guardiola. Hansi Flick focused on his own style and shifted away the Barcelona DNA to a high-pressing physical team. It marked a major shift in the club's footballing philosophy. For over a decade, Barcelona had become synonymous with the tiki-taka style, a brand of football that focused on fast passing, ball retention, and positional play. However, football evolved, and so too did the vulnerabilities in Barcelona's tactical setup. By the time Flick arrived, the team's reliance on tiki-taka had become somewhat predictable, and Flick changed it into a pressing Hansi Flick's appointment, brought fresh ideas. His approach combined the high-intensity pressing and rapid transitions that had defined his time at Bayern Munich, with the technical and positional discipline already deeply embedded in Barcelona's DNA. Flick didn't completely abandon tiki-taka, but instead refined it, making Barcelona's play more dynamic and difficult for opponents to handle. Let's break down the tactical elements of Flick's Barcelona and how he revitalized the club's playing style. Hansi Flick stepped into the football world like a mechanic who found a machine perfectly engineered to function in a particular way and thought, what if we change this? He wasn't interested in just tweaking the system, making small adjustments to improve performance here or there. No, Flick had a bigger vision. He wanted to take apart the entire mechanism and rebuild it with his own principles. The machine he wanted to rewire was one of football's greatest institutions, FC Barcelona. For years, Barcelona had established a style of play that the world admired. It was known as tiki-taka, a possession-based football philosophy that saw players keep the ball through quick, short passes. They moved the ball patiently, methodically, and skillfully, wearing down opponents who were left chasing shadows. It was a system built on precision and control. The genius of tiki-taka was that it reduced the chances of losing the ball, and as the old saying goes, if you have the ball, the opponent cannot score. Under the stewardship of coaches like Pep Guardiola, tiki-taka reached its zenith, helping Barcelona win countless trophies and cementing their place in football history. But even the most finely tuned machines eventually show signs of wear. Over time, other teams began to figure out the rhythm of Barcelona's play. Defenders anticipated the next pass before it was made. Opponents adapted, sitting deep and closing spaces and waiting for Barcelona to make a mistake. The fluid beauty of the old system slowly turned into predictability. Tiki-taka had become a victim of its own success. When Hansi Flick arrived, he saw the same thing everyone else saw, a system that was struggling to keep up with modern football's demands. But instead of simply accepting that this was how Barcelona played, Flick asked a daring question. What if we did things differently? In his first week at the club, Flick posed a simple but striking analogy to his players and coaching staff. What happens when a machine gets stuck in one gear? The answer was obvious to everyone in the room. It slows down, breaks, and eventually stops working altogether. This was how Flick viewed Barcelona's current style of play. They had been stuck in one gear for far too long. The passing, the movement, the relentless focus on maintaining possession, it was all too predictable. Barcelona had spent years building a philosophy centered on ball retention. It was believed that the more they held on to the ball, the less their opponents could harm them. But Flick saw something else. He noticed that the obsession with possession was limiting Barcelona's ability to hurt teams offensively. They were no longer playing with the speed or directness needed to break down modern defenses. Why are we afraid to move forward with the ball? Flick asked during one of his first tactical meetings. What if we use possession to drive the attack, not just to keep the ball? It sounded simple enough, but it represented a radical departure from the Barcelona of old. For years, the team had been built on a foundation of patient buildup, shifting the ball sideways until an opening presented itself. Flick didn't want to wait for gaps to appear. He wanted his team to create them. He believed that Barcelona's obsession with possession had led to stagnation. They needed a new way forward. To do this, Flick introduced a faster, more vertical approach. He told his players not to be afraid of taking risks. He encouraged his midfielders to break the lines with daring passes and his wingers to take on defenders. At every opportunity, his instruction was clear. Move the ball forward quickly, stretch the pitch. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. This was a radical shift from the tiki-taka philosophy where every pass had to be perfect, where control was paramount, and where risks were minimized. Under Flick, mistakes were part of the learning process. His mantra became, if we make mistakes, we'll fix them. But if we never take risks, we'll never grow. Under Flick's guidance, Barcelona underwent a transformation. The players who had once been confined to safe passes and cautious movement were now encouraged to express themselves. Midfielders like Pedri and Gavi, who had grown up in the Barcelona system, found themselves making more daring forward passes. The fullbacks, who traditionally played conservatively to maintain possession, were now given license to bomb forward and overlap the wingers. The forwards, who had been taught to wait patiently for the perfect chance, were now encouraged to create their own opportunities by pressing high and taking on defenders. The results were dramatic. In their first few games under Flick, Barcelona played with a renewed sense of purpose. Their passing was more direct, their movement more aggressive. They pressed opponents high up the pitch, suffocating them with relentless pressure. When they lost the ball, they hunted it down immediately, looking to regain possession in dangerous areas rather than retreating to a defensive shape. One match in particular epitomized the Flick revolution. Barcelona faced a team known for sitting deep and defending in numbers, a classic low block that had often frustrated Barcelona in the past. Under the old system, they would have passed the ball side to side, waiting patiently for a gap to open. But this time, they did something different. Instead of patiently probing, the ball went straight through the middle, bypassing multiple lines of defense with a quick, vertical pass. The move was risky. It could have led to a turnover and a dangerous counterattack, but it didn't. The pass found its target, and within seconds, Barcelona had sliced through the defense and scored. The commentators were stunned. "What just happened?" one of them asked. It was a fair question. This wasn't the Barcelona of old. This was a team playing with speed, with aggression, with intent. They weren't waiting for the perfect moment. They were creating it. This match was a perfect example of how Flick had reimagined Barcelona's game. It wasn't just about possession anymore. It was about progress. It wasn't about controlling the ball. It was about controlling the game. One of the most significant changes Flick brought to Barcelona was his emphasis on pressing. Pressing had been a part of Barcelona's game under previous coaches, but it had always been a more measured positional press. The goal was to regain possession calmly and restart the passing cycle. Under Flick, pressing became more aggressive, more urgent. Flick introduced a version of gegenpressing, a high-energy form of pressing where the team immediately tries to win the ball back after losing it. The idea was simple. The moment Barcelona lost possession, they would swarm the opposition, cutting off passing lanes and forcing mistakes. It was a system designed to unsettle the opposition and regain control of the game as quickly as possible. But pressing was only half of the equation. Flick also placed a heavy emphasis on transitions. Once Barcelona won the ball back, they didn't waste time resetting into their usual possession structure. Instead, they looked to attack immediately. Flick's philosophy was clear. Win the ball high, attack fast. The fullbacks like Alejandro Balde and Koundé played a crucial role in this system. They were asked to push high up the pitch, stretching the opposition defense and creating space for the midfielders and forwards. But Flick also ensured that the team wasn't vulnerable to counterattacks. One of his key tactical innovations was the use of a rest defense, where one of the fullbacks would stay deeper, effectively forming a back three when the team was attacking. This allowed Barcelona to maintain defensive stability, even while pushing players forward. The midfield trio, led by the tireless work of Frenkie de Jong, Pedri, and Gavi, became the engine of the team. Their ability to press, win the ball, and then immediately drive forward was key to Barcelona's success under Flick. They were no longer just orchestrators of possession. They were disruptors, constantly harrying the opposition and looking to exploit any weaknesses. As Barcelona's results improved, so too did the players' confidence. They began to embrace Flick's philosophy of risk and reward. No longer shackled by the constraints of tiki-taka, they felt free to express themselves on the pitch. This newfound freedom was particularly evident in players like Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. Under Flick, their natural attacking instincts were given full rein. They were no longer required to patiently wait for the perfect pass. They were encouraged to take on defenders, to make things happen. But it wasn't just the players who were changing, it was the club's entire identity. Barcelona had long been synonymous with tiki-taka, with the slow, deliberate build-up that had brought them so much success. Flick's Barcelona was different. It was faster, more dynamic, more unpredictable. It was still recognizably Barcelona, but with an edge. This evolution wasn't without its critics. Some purists lamented the loss of the old system, the possession football that had brought Barcelona to the top of the world. But for Flick, this wasn't about abandoning the past, it was about adapting to the present. Football is always evolving, he said in an interview. The game changes, and we have to change with it. If we stay stuck in the past, we'll be left behind. Flick was careful not to completely discard Barcelona's possession-based identity. He understood that the club's DNA was built on controlling the ball, but what he introduced was a new layer to that identity, an added dimension that became evident in the new Barcelona.